She shouted across the business-class cabin. I didn't pay to sit next to a black child, completely unaware that the child was the son of the man who owned the entire train. The high-speed train hadn't even departed yet. Inside the business-class carriage, soft white lights glowed like snowflakes over rows of luxurious gray seats. Walnut serving trays, the scent of fresh leather. The crisp sound of rolling luggage wheels echoed against the floor. Then stopped. Claire Whitmore entered as if it were her private boardroom eyes, calculating posture, needing no instruction. She stood in the middle of the cabin, her gaze scanning each passenger like an X-ray, until she stopped. A young black boy, an empty seat beside him, a polite gaze, and a quiet greeting. "Good morning, ma'am." With just a single look, Claire made her judgment, and in that moment, no one, not even she, knew. Her life was about to board a train. She would have no control over it. New York City, on a Monday morning at the start of the week. Inside Grand Central Station, groups of well-dressed passengers steadily made their way toward the business-class boarding area of the newest high-speed train, a marvel of technology praised as the pinnacle of transportation for the decade Claire Whitmore. 41 years old, senior marketing director at Norvale Telecom, glided into the station like someone long acquainted with power. Blonde curls, perfectly styled, oversized Dior sunglasses, and a gleaming white Rimowa suitcase, rolling in sync with each elegant step. Claire didn't smile at anyone. When the ticket scan confirmed her seat, she entered the VIP carriage with a composed air, her eyes sweeping across the rows of seats, as if silently assessing the worth of each person sitting there. Then she stopped. Seated in 2B by the window was a young black boy around 9 years old. Curly hair, an intelligent face, glasses perched on his nose. And in his hands, not a phone, not a video game, but a thick book. Its cover reading, Understanding Maglev Technology. The boy smiled, his voice soft and polite. "Good morning, ma'am." Claire took a half-step back. Her brows furrowed. There was no mistaking the words she uttered next spoken, just loudly enough to draw attention. "I paid for a business-class ticket, not to sit next to a child playing with Lego." She turned around, pulled out her phone, and made a call. "Melissa, listen. I'm sitting next to a little boy messing around with some colorful toy blocks. In the VIP cabin, somewhere between New York and Chicago, I can't tell if this is a high-speed train or a traveling kindergarten." Jordan, the boy's name, gently closed his book. Without a word, he reached into the side pocket of his small backpack, pulled out a cloth, and wiped the surface of the tray table. Calmly, without complaint, Claire sat down in seat 2A, carefully smoothing her blazer to avoid any creases. She didn't glance at Jordan even once. Jordan sat upright. His feet didn't yet reach the floor. On the folding table in front of him, he carefully placed a sharpened pencil and a notebook filled with neat handwriting, mostly technical diagrams and numbers. Once again, Jordan turned slightly toward her and spoke gently. "I really like high-speed trains. Did you know this system uses magnetic levitation to reduce friction?" Claire frowned, shooting him a sharp glare. "I'm here to work, not to babysit." "Don't talk to me." Her voice was as crisp and cutting as the snip of Taylor's shears. An elderly woman, seated 2 rows away, looked over her expression, filled with disapproval. The middle-aged man beside her simply placed a hand on his wife's shoulder, as if to gently keep her from reacting. Jordan let out a quiet breath and turned back to his book. About 20 minutes after the train departed, the carriage gave a light jolt as it transitioned between track systems. Jordan had just opened a bottle of fruit juice, and in a brief moment of carelessness, his hand slipped. The cap popped off, and a small splash landed on Claire's pristine white blazer. Jordan turned again softly, but before he could say a word, Claire leapt from her seat, as if she'd been splashed with acid. "What did you just do?" Everyone nearby turned their heads. Claire stood up straight, her voice booming like a public address system. "This is a limited edition Armani piece. Do you even know that kids like you shouldn't be in this cabin? Especially black kids like you." A moment of absolute silence fell over the entire carriage. Jordan stood still, a tissue still in his hand. He said quietly, I'm sorry. "I didn't mean to." A young woman seated behind them, a well-known influencer on Facebook, silently pulled out her phone, switched it to record mode, and aimed the camera squarely at Claire. Her eyes didn't leave Claire's face for a second. Then the sound of leather shoes echoed down the aisle between the rows of seats. A tall man wearing a black trench coat, sunglasses, and wireless earbuds calmly approached Claire. Jaden Ellis, tech billionaire and founder of Ellis Tech, stepped forward, removed his sunglasses, and his eyes were cold as steel. He looked at Claire, his voice low and steady, not raised, but enough to freeze the entire carriage. "What did you just do to my son?" Claire turned as if she'd just been slapped across the face. A passenger whispered, "That's Jaden Ellis. He owns the company that runs this entire rail line." Claire took a step back, barely daring to breathe. Jaden turned to his son. "Jordan, are you okay?" Jordan nodded, though his eyes were still wet. Claire stammered, her lips dry. I didn't know he was your son. I didn't mean to. I just lost my temper." Jaden didn't frown. He didn't raise his voice, but his silence was heavier than any scolding could ever be. He slowly turned his head toward the back of the cabin, where the young influencer was still holding her phone tight, her eyes sharp and unwavering. She stepped forward. "I recorded the entire thing." From the moment she boarded, mocking the boy, calling her friend to complain about him, like he was a piece of luggage, and now calling him a black child who doesn't belong in this cabin. Would anyone like to see it? She pressed play. Claire's shrill voice, each racially charged word, echoed clearly through the quiet cabin. A man sitting farther down stood up and said loudly, "She should be removed from this cabin." Claire turned back toward Jaden in a panic, her voice cracking. I can explain. It was just a misunderstanding." Jaden remained calm. His eyes locked onto hers. "You don't need to know who my son is to treat him like a human being. Courtesy is a standard, not a privilege reserved for the rich or the famous." Then he added, his voice quiet, but each word striking like a nail into her conscience. "It's because of people like you that I've had to teach my son how to be strong since he was 6 years old." Just then, a train attendant approached her, expression serious. "Ms. Whitmore, to ensure a comfortable experience for all passengers. We're asking that you relocate to the economy cabin. This request comes directly from Executive Operations. Claire stood frozen. She could no longer say a word. The Rimowa suitcase, once a symbol of status, now clattered behind her like the sound of a coffin being wheeled away as she pulled it out of the VIP cabin under the gaze of dozens of watching eyes. Jaden didn't look at her again. Not even once. Jordan was now seated beside his father. He still seemed shy, even as the entire cabin quietly rallied behind him. Jaden placed a hand on his son's shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. "You did very well," Jordan whispered. "But I spilled the juice. It was my fault." Jaden paused for a second, then smiled warmly. "No one has to apologize for being themselves, son. Being kind doesn't mean never making mistakes. It means facing them with grace, even when others don't." Within just 2 hours, the video captured by the young influencer had reached over 1-2 million views across social media. The hashtag Justice for Jordan climbed into the top 5 trending topics on Twitter across the northeastern United States. Digital media outlets began reporting the story in unison. Senior executive insults Black child in business class, and the truth behind it leaves everyone speechless. Netizens quickly dug into Claire Whitmore's online history. From comments criticizing welfare programs that breed laziness to posts subtly mocking kids with no manners, the Norvale Corporation swiftly released an internal statement. Claire Whitmore has been suspended, pending an internal investigation. Not long after a major corporate partner announced the cancellation of a high-profile advertising deal that Claire had been leading, social media exploded. But this time, it was for a child who knew when to stay silent, how to be respectful, and when to stand firm. 2 weeks later, Chicago. At a national conference on educational equity, a young boy stood on stage behind a banner that read, "What do we teach children? By the way we treat them." Jordan Ellis, his hair neatly combed, wearing a tailored miniature suit, stepped up to the podium. The auditorium, filled with over 700 attendees, fell silent, watching each step he took. Jaden Ellis sat in the front row, his hands resting on his knees. His expression, once stern, now radiated pure pride. Jordan held the microphone, took a deep breath, and began, "I'm just a child, but I've learned that sometimes the world will try to make you believe you're not good enough, not worthy just because you're different. But if you start believing that too, you lose the most precious thing of all, your self-respect. People may not always see your worth, but that doesn't mean you don't have it." The entire auditorium rose to their feet, erupting in applause. A standing ovation that lasted more than 45 seconds. Some wiped away tears. Others stood silently as if witnessing something greater than politics or media. Something far more profound. The quiet coming of age of a child in the heart of a storm. A young woman standing beside her friend whispered through misty eyes, "That boy, he's going to be someone, I swear it." After returning from the conference, a short interview with Jordan aired on CBS Evening News. The reporter asked Jordan, "Why didn't you cry or fight back when you were treated that way?" Jordan thought for a moment, then answered, "Because I knew that if I reacted, they'd say I was disrespectful. If I talked back, they'd say I was an angry black kid. I learned to stay quiet, because sometimes that's the only way to be heard. That answer was shared across every major social media platform. Many Black parents began sharing stories of their own children. A movement began to spread under the name Silent Strength. Jaden sat in his office watching the video again. Tears fell quietly down his face. He remembered all the times he had to stay silent. In classrooms, in boardrooms, in life. He understood his son wasn't just living his own story. He was continuing the pain his father once had to bury inside. After the scandal, Claire withdrew to a quiet suburban neighborhood. Her social media accounts were deactivated. She became a symbol of public condemnation across the country. But one day, she visited her mother, a 78-year-old woman suffering from Alzheimer's. In the cold, quiet room of the nursing home, her mother repeated a familiar question. "Claire, did you scold anyone again today?" Claire sat down beside the bed and held her mother's hand. "I was the one who got scolded." "Mom, why?" Claire looked out the window. "Because I didn't know how to listen. I thought I knew everything, but it turns out a child knew how to behave better than I did." Silence filled the room. For the first time in years, Claire cried, not because she lost her job, but because she saw herself stripped bare through the eyes of the very child she once looked down on. 6 months later, at a federal education summit, Jordan appeared alongside his father as the youngest honorary guest ever invited. There, Jaden announced the expansion of the Jordan Ellis Scholarship Foundation. A new initiative called Silence Doesn't Mean Voiceless would be rolled out across 50 public schools in the northeastern states. Workshops designed to confront implicit bias, experiential classrooms built around understanding prejudice and dignity, and a mentorship program where Black entrepreneurs would guide the next generation on how to survive and thrive in environments that aren't always fair. Jordan ended his speech with a promise. "I don't want to be remembered as just the kid who got mistreated on a high-speed train. I want to help build a system where no one has to stay silent, just to be allowed to exist." The entire auditorium rose in applause, not for a child to be pitied, but for a symbol of the future.